today we have, opening the session to give a little bit of background, Jason Wolfe, Senior OVC Advisor for Economic Strengthening from USAID. OVC stands for Orphans and Vulnerable Children. To close out at the end of the technical session, we have Kiernan King. He's the program analyst also for OVC and HIV/AIDS economic strengthening. He specializes in youth. I really want to thank both Jason and Kiernan for bringing us this material. This is something they've been working on for several years, and it's very exciting and it's very rigorous. So today we have a case study for you, and our two star speakers are Benelli Mandaza, the DREAMS program manager of Bantwana, Zimbabwe. And we also have Mbonisi Tshuma, the executive director of Bantwana, Zimbabwe. So they're going to be talking about their experience implementing the model. And I'm just going to let them explain to you what the model is. We have a couple of other folks here today. We have the specialist from Malawi and the specialist from Mozambique. And we have somebody who's been supporting from Boston, from the World Education Bantwana Initiative. And they're also available to answer questions or comments. So feel free to throw your questions in the chat even while people are speaking, and you might have somebody else who's picking them up and answering as we go. Okay, great. Thank you so much. And over to you, Jason.
Thanks, Laura. Actually, I'll turn it over to Kiernan to get us started.
Great, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and thank you for attending today's webinar. My name is Kiernan King, and I'm a program analyst on the youth branch within the Office of HIV and AIDS, otherwise known as OHA, at USAID in Washington, D.C., and I focus on the DREAMS portfolio. I'm a member of the Economic Strengthening subgroup, and today I'm joined by my colleague, Jason Wolfe, Senior Advisor in OHA and one of the co-leads for the Economic Strengthening subgroup. During today's webinar, I'd like to invite you all to put any questions you may have in the chat, which will be addressed in the Q&A at the end. To provide some brief background, DREAMS was announced by Ambassador Birx on World AIDS Day in 2014 and began as a partnership between the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, known as PEPFAR, and several private sector companies with implementation by several agencies, including USAID. This HIV prevention program is aimed at reducing new infections in adolescent girls and young women, who we often refer to as AGYW, in high-burden geographic areas in Haiti and 15 sub-Saharan African countries, as you can see on the map on this slide. DREAMS supports a comprehensive package of layered, evidence-based interventions and services targeted to AGYW most vulnerable to HIV. One of the critical pieces of the core package and intervention of most interest to this BEPSE community of practice is economic strengthening. And today, the team from Bantwana will highlight Siyakha, one of the 5 comprehensive models that the ES subgroup recommended to PEPFAR. I'll now turn it over to Jason to provide additional context to the components of comprehensive economic strengthening in DREAMS. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Kiernan. And Katie, we can go on to the next slide. So while economic strengthening has been part of DREAMS from the very beginning, as Kiernan mentioned, when we started in 2014, as time went on in DREAMS implementation, based on what we were seeing and hearing in the field from program participants, and also, taking a look at kind of learning and emerging evidence worldwide, we realized that we needed to beef up the work we were doing under DREAMS for economic strengthening. In 2020, we introduced new requirements for more comprehensive programming on economic strengthening within DREAMS that includes 5 basic requirements. You see them listed here on the slide, beginning, of course, with a market assessment to guide everything that we're doing based on where the opportunities are in the local economy. Providing gender-specific training in various dimensions, depending on whether we are supporting young women to pursue an entrepreneurship pathway, a wage employment pathway, or some combination of the two. Importantly, integrating in startup support after the training concludes, which can take a variety of forms depending on the type of pathway, type of job that the young women are trying to pursue, and taking into account their own context, where they're starting from. including a continued focus on savings groups for those young women who are earning an income. Savings groups are something that were a quite common intervention introduced at the beginning of DREAMS, and we have certainly seen a lot of value coming from that and not wanting to lose it. And lastly, a focus on ongoing coaching and mentoring, both during the training as well as after the training concludes, to support young women as they start up new businesses or new jobs and careers, and facilitating access to social and business networks that will continue to support them in their economic journey. In addition, we can go on to the next slide, Katie. We also, a small group of us at headquarters across the agencies that are implementing PEPFAR, USAID, CDC, DoD, Peace Corps, took a look at, well, I should take a step back and say, we started with our friends at Youth Power Action, took a look at kind of a very rapid review of the evidence and the experience in this area. And after looking through their review and discussing amongst ourselves and discussing with developers, we kind of focused in on 5 models that were evidence-based and evidence-informed, that seemed to hold a lot of promise for meeting all of these requirements and helping and being quite suitable for the implementation context for DREAMS. You see them listed here on this slide. The model that we will focus on today in this case study is the Siyakha model, which was developed by the Bantwana initiative at World Education. I think you can click once more, Katie. We'll highlight it there on the slide for you. That's the one that we will be talking about today. You see that there are 4 other models in addition to Siyakha that we recommended for our field teams and implementing partners to consider that also do a good job of meeting all of these requirements and have a good track record of success in this area. But I think we're all excited to hear more about Siyakha, and I think I'm turning it over to Benele to get us started on that.
Thank you, Jason. I hope everybody is well. We will be unpacking for you our Siyakha model, the process of developing, the implementation within the pilot, and the things we're looking at as we are scaling the model within the context of Zimbabwe. Next slide, please, Katie. So as Jason advised on those 5 elements that were considered critical for impactful economic strengthening, the Siyakha model, and just as an addition, Siyakha is an isiNdebele word. isiNdebele is one of the local languages in Zimbabwe, and it means to build. And so we began our theory from the theory of change, looking to build adolescent girls and young women's capacity to improve their retention in programs, economic strengthening programs, as well as their completion, as well as improving their access to sustainability, to sustainable entrepreneurship and employment. Our theory of change basically starts by saying that if we build the life skills of adolescent girls, support them with market-specific vocational skills and enable their participation in high-growth sectors. And we develop specific and compelling value propositions for mentors or host businesses, and we'll be able to unpack some of that both in formal and informal contexts. Improve their financial inclusion and financial literacy, and I think Jason already mentioned the savings groups and how integral savings options are for girls, as well as access to products, financial products that may be available in their community. Address, which is critical for us, their occupational risks with a particular emphasis on sexual harassment. Support their transition into full-time employment or entrepreneurship. And this is through establishing these strong linkages with individual and group businesses, as well as engaging male partners whom we have learned over time are great enablers of girls' access and retention in economic strengthening. And we'll talk a little more about that as we go through the model. So if we put these 7 elements together, then we can improve retention and completion of mentorship programs, as well as ensure that the girls have improved skills for sustainable entrepreneurship and employment. Next slide, please. So with that theory of change, we then birthed the Siyakha Girls model. This was, our pilot was conducted in 2018 into 2019. However, the model was really a result of almost 10 years of trial and error, testing certain elements and putting it together. And so we came to this stage and named the model Siyakha, which is building girls. It is 8 steps to sustainable livelihoods for adolescent girls and young women. Step number 1 begins with a labor market assessment. This labor market assessment identifies the critical, most viable sectors within the community where this girl is located in order to establish, if you would, a basket of options that are not only viable, but have a sustainable outlook for her to get involved in. The labor market assessment engages vocational training centers. We want to look at the curriculum that is available for those particular sectors in order for us to ensure that what the girls are learning is what the market actually requires. In contexts such as ours, where technology and the building of a better base for how things are done within particular sectors, we find that sometimes vocational training is a step behind. So you want to engage the vocational training centers with the results of the labor market assessment in order for us to tailor the kind of curriculum necessary for ease of entry into those sectors. The labor market assessment will also identify the artisans, the formal and informal companies within the community where that adolescent girl is, as well as establish artisans or mentors who may be able to have the girls shadow them in the course of the model. Step number 2, so once we've got this basket of sectors identified by the labor market assessment, we then begin the process, which is step number 2 of recruiting the girls, the eligible girls. And how our recruitment works is that we advertise the sectors identified by the labor market assessment, and we're looking for girls who not only have an interest, but a sense of an aptitude, or at least a passion for those particular sectors. They are in an assisted process to apply. And the reason we have put in an application process is we want the girls to have a sense of ownership, a sense of a contribution to their lives beginning to change. And because in the DREAMS context, we are working with girls who are extremely vulnerable, that process is assisted. The model itself, just to put this in now, is intended to mimic the world of work. It's intended to give the girls a real life experience, if you would, of what they would find in the job market. So in the same way that you would expect someone to apply for a job, we assist the girls to apply for participation in the model. And as I say, that is an assisted process. So these girls may be selected from the DREAMS primary package. They may be referred from clinical partners or other programs within that community that deal with adolescent girls, for example, second chance education or early childhood stimulation programs can refer adolescent girls to this platform who meet the criteria. Moving on, once we have selected the girls, we move on to step number 3, which now looks at, which is the 5-day foundational training. So this is the first training of the model. We bring the girls together for 5 days and deliver to them life skills. Something that we're really proud of in our foundational training is what we call the 9 work readiness behaviors. And these are behaviors, again, that we've developed over time that best represent what a potential employer is looking for. And while the model mimics the world of work, it is also the model that represents preparation for the world of entrepreneurship. And so with that 5-day foundational training, the girls go through the process. Just to go back a little to our theory of change, we identified that we wanted to strengthen retention. And we found over the years that after the foundational training, in readiness for vocational training, we had situations where girls would drop out or they'd find something more interesting. And when you are working with the time limits and funding constraints, that can be a great challenge. And so we introduced between steps 3 and 4 what we call the DREAMS or the Siyakha girls social contract. This is a contract that is now signed by the girl herself as well as a guarantor, whether it's from her family background or someone, if she is coming from a child-headed household, for example, we would look then for a trusted adult within the community, someone like a social worker, or someone like a community childcare worker, a chief who can stand in as guarantor. And what the social contract does is it simply states that the girl is committed to going through the entire model to the very end. And in some contexts, we have put in a clause that says, should she drop out of the program, out of the model before she completes, we then engage her social network to be able to pay back to the program the money that has been spent on her to that point. It sounds a bit punitive, but it's intended to get a sense of ownership, a sense of empowerment and commitment from the girls. And so this is a retention in the model at this point. Once the social contract is signed, these girls then go into vocational training, which, like I said, in step number 1, has been tailored to speak to what the local market requires in terms of skills. In the course of that vocational training, the adolescent girls are linked with local artisans. We've included field trips, depending on the context, if it's a rural or an urban environment, where they're able to actually go on a field trip and see what a company or a factory or a sole artisan enterprise looks like and how it functions as part of their vocational training. Once the give or take 2 months on the vocational training, depending, of course, on the skills identified by the market assessment, once they complete that, we bring the girls back in for step number 5, which is the 4-day Siyakha Girls Social Asset Building Training. These social assets are designed to prepare her for the world of work. And like I said, the model speaks to employability and entrepreneurship, because we want to prepare her to face or prepare her and give her the skills necessary to face the world of work, the world of enterprise. And so we've added a component in the 4-day as social asset building training on sexual harassment. Again, historically, we had seen that we place girls in internships, and perhaps she's doing a catering course, and she's put in to an environment that perhaps it's a restaurant that runs late into the night. And so she's then further exposed to potential sexual harassment or other risks because of the environment. And so this social asset building training is intended to build her capacity, her agency, to not only identify, but report sexual harassment in the world of work and strengthen her ability to respond and say something. She is in a exacerbated vulnerability. From step number 5, we then place the girls in a give or take 3-month internship or apprenticeship. An element of the placement is that, again, we have learned from experience that putting the girl in internship as a single individual is challenging because if she's the only person, the only intern, for example, coming from the vulnerable background that she is, with HIV vulnerabilities, then her likelihood of being able to be bedded in the culture of that environment can sometimes be difficult. And so part of the model, we place the girls in groups of between 3 and 5, depending on the size, of course, of the enterprise, intended for peer support, as well as intended for one of our exit pathways, which is group business. Again, challenging the girls to strengthen the peer mechanism, which helps with retention. So once during that internship and apprenticeship, there are bi-weekly check-ins. We are following up not only our Siyakha interns, but as well as having conversations with the mentors and the business owners themselves to get feedback on the quality of the training, vocational training, and the quality of the girl, and what prospects these mentors see for these young women who are in internship. Moving on to step number 7, we then, once the internship is completed, we bring them for a one-day exit review meeting where we bring in the trainers, the caregivers, the social contract guarantors, the mentors themselves from internship, to help the girls decide, which is now step number 8, on which pathway they will be taking. So we have 2 major pathways, and we'll go into the pathways in the next slide, of entrepreneurship, which is either an individual business or group business based on the peer support that they've gone through, or for her to choose the employment pathway, which is either wage employment or extended internship. Running concurrently to this will be helping the girls maintain a savings discipline from the very beginning, and give or take 6 to 9 months, the model will bring us to the point of graduation with an addition of 6 months post-graduation, to ensure that whichever pathway the girl has selected, we're able to support her into sustainability. Next slide, please. So these are our livelihood pathways. The first one being employment in the host company. This is, she has acquitted herself well in internship, and the host company, the enterprise, has the ability to absorb her into full-time employment, either her or the 3 or so that have been placed there for internship. Entrepreneurship, of course, is self-employment. So she's gained knowledge of how to manage the world of customers and the world of work through the internship. She now has the vocational training skill. That's the technical skill for the sector that she's chosen. And as a group of between 3 and 5 girls, they can either choose a group enterprise, or she can break out on her own, supported by the consistent savings discipline that has been factored into the model. The last one is extended internship, where the mentors may feel that the amount of time the young woman has been in internship was insufficient for the transfer of skill, and at their own cost, as the mentor, are willing to absorb her into extended internship until that skills transfer is completed. Next slide, please. So in Zim, like I mentioned, we ran this pilot and the impact assessment was funded by USAID and Aspires through FHI 360. And as I said, it was building on our experience. It was conducted in Bulawayo, that's the 2nd largest city in Zimbabwe, which has both urban and some peri-urban sectors, where we drew the adolescent girls from. These were girls aged 18 to 24 out of school. The growth sectors that were identified by the labor market assessment included auto mechanics, leatherworking, and textiles. And we were able to, next slide, please, Katie. We were able to enroll the girls based on their interest and aptitude in those. Our results, it was a pilot. 81% of the girls completed the foundational training. And these are girls who were out of school. Some had been quote unquote idle or sitting at home for as much as between 2 and 3 years. And 81% completed that first stage. 78% were then selected, that's 48, were then selected for the full program support. That's steps 1 through 8, and we had a 98% retention. In terms of improved economic position of these girls, after the 7-month pilot, 13 started their own businesses. 7 were absorbed into full-time employment at the end of the pilot, and an additional 7 after 1 year. So they've got their improved CVs, they have the skill, this agency to present themselves for employment. 4 went into extended internship, and 12 were actively seeking employment or beginning to start or think about niches where they could operate from in their own enterprises. Next slide, please. So with those results, Bantwana is now scaling Siyakha in Zimbabwe with the CDC-funded DREAMS program that is in Matabeleland North in 4 districts that are predominantly rural. And we have moved, so our target for economic strengthening is 8,000 girls aged between 15 and 24 who will receive either what we are now calling basic or comprehensive Siyakha, which are just elements of the model. Some of the specific growth sectors that have been identified include artisanal gold mining, climate smart agriculture, and business management, because again, it's a rural context. Next slide, please, Katie. Because it's a rural context, a lot of the girls will be getting involved in enterprises that require business management skills as runners. Some of the innovations that we've had to implement in this weird and wonderful world of COVID and its effects. We have developed specific economic empowerment measures, which we want to be able to track that an improved economic position means what. And we have a tool that would be able to measure that at when the girls begin and at the point where they graduate, and what sort of impact the model has had. We are developing and including our Siyakha graduates and facilitators as part of the NGO track. So for example, girls who will be going through catering courses will then be eligible to provide services for other NGO meetings. So if we have a training session and that requires refreshments, we would be looking at empowering our Siyakha graduates to take part in that track. Of course, using like digitizing and going the digital route, given the stop-start nature that COVID has introduced, has brought us to the point to not only reinforce learning, but continual engagement for adolescent girls and young women within the Siyakha model, to bring us to the place where we can deliver the foundational training off of a digital platform. It's a hybrid where it's not completely virtual, because that would definitely not work. And so we have contact times and then virtual sessions, and we bring the two together. Next slide, please. Some of the adaptations. So this one, I just want to put in your hearing, reaching in-school adolescent girls in the 15 to 19 age band within the DREAMS context means you have girls who are eligible for DREAMS participating, but are still in school. And so if you prematurely introduce all of these opportunities, they may be in danger to drop out. So we are developing, as part of the Siyakha model, a curriculum that will speak to developing an entrepreneurial mindset and skills while they are in school. So being able to adapt that as part of their secondary school curriculum. Of course, there is the overlap with DREAMS primary package intervention, seeing how, especially for the 20 to 24 age band, being able to get them to, while they're completing or going through the primary package, be able to then introduce the Siyakha model, because of course we know that economic strengthening is a draw card for older adolescent girls, or in this case, older women. We're of course expanding our startup kit, which is part of the model, beyond just looking at making sure the girls are saving, but ensuring that we are giving them the tools of the trade so that girls who do go the entrepreneurial route are able to start, have a start to spin their businesses. Yes. So that's really the model. I'd like to hand this part now over to Mbonisi, who will let you know what we're doing across the other DREAMS countries.
Thanks, Vanille. Jason, did you want to come in before I continue, or should I just get on to the next session?
No, let's just get on with it. Go ahead, Mbonisi. Thank
you. So, Vanille, thanks for unpacking the model. So as of this year, as of this financial year, we as Bantwana Zimbabwe rolled out DREAMS in Zimbabwe, as Vanille has said, in 4 districts. But we also have been providing technical support. Next slide, please. We have also been providing technical support to 7 other implementing partners in 6 countries who are also rolling out Siyakha and contextualizing to their own context. So we have FHI 360 in South Africa. FHI 360 helped us with the pilot, with evaluating the pilot, and they also are rolling it out in South Africa. We have World Education in Malawi implementing the OVC program. And then we also have the PEPFAR CDC partner, JPIGO, also rolling out Siyakha under their DREAMS program. In Tanzania, we have World Education also implementing Let Girls Learn. This is not an OVC or a DREAMS program, but they have adapted Siyakha to sort of like return girls who are out of school into learning platforms. And then in Mozambique, we are also working with UNDA, a local partner, with technical support from our World Education team in Mozambique as well. In Zambia, we're working with PACT, and in Namibia, we are working with Project Hope. Actually, in Namibia, there are 2 partners. There's Project Hope and PACT. PACT is implementing the Achieve program, and both these are DREAMS interventions. Next slide. I would like to bring your particular attention to two country programs that have taken up this model quite well. In Mozambique, we are working with UNDA and our World Education Mozambique office, as I had said, and they started rolling out this model beginning of the financial year. So far, they've done the labor market assessment, they've selected their goals, they've done the vocational training, and they've also done the soft skills trainings. They've customized and are delivering the vocational training to girls in communities. So I think there was a question on the chat box asking about the various ways of engaging girls into vocational trainings, especially in resource-constrained rural areas. In Mozambique, they have got 2 models where the girls go to the vocational training centers, but then there are those who cannot go to the vocational training centers, maybe because of distance or because of other responsibilities at home, like child minding and so forth. So the vocational training center, so they actually have arrangements with the vocational training centers where the trainers come to the girls within the communities and sessions are facilitated. Then caregiver and community spouse and caregiver or spouse and community engagement. I think this is part of the social contract. Vanilla gave reference to this. And then they are also implementing Siyakha simultaneously with the DREAMS primary package. So in Mozambique, the primary package is taking up to 8 months for the girls to graduate. And there's a way of retaining them and also ensuring that girls are getting both the primary and the secondary package. The Siyakha model is being layered on safe spaces, and girls, particularly those aged between 18 to 24, I think not only 20 to 24, are going through the Siyakha model as well as the primary package at the same time. And then also they're leveraging on strategic partnerships with USAID partners. Point in case here will be the Rama project, where they're using smart agriculture and fishery, which are really fisheries and drip irrigation to engage girls in vocational trades. Next slide. Then in Malawi, our manuals have been translated to Chichewa for ease of understanding. And then also there's an overlap of the DREAMS primary package with the Siyakha model. And then in Malawi, they've also formed district task forces with members of local government as steering committees for Siyakha implementation. So what this does is that it helps bring in various stakeholders, various companies into play, and also encourages troubleshooting at community level. At this juncture, I think our Malawi counterpart failed to join in due to network challenges, but we do have Obed Darara, who is our rep in Mozambique, just to talk about, just for a minute, just to share his experiences about how they have started implementing the Siyakha model.
Thank you, Mbonisi. Just to share a bit of experiences around the implementation. I think for us, one thing that we've learned is the inclusive nature of the labor market assessment as an starting point for engagement with the private sector, the training institutes. So as they're involved in the whole elaboration of the market assessment and the sharing of results, it creates a space for them to be cautious of the needs that exist within their community, and they themselves are also willing to take part and participate actively in the adaptation of the model and ensuring that the girls continue and go through the 8 steps of the model. And also, I think just to add on to the translation of the manuals as well, we've also managed to translate our manuals into Portuguese. But one key aspect is because of the low levels of education within the country was the process of reducing text within some of the manuals and the content of the manual. I think for us, that really was a great point in terms of the adaptation. And I think lastly, just to add on to the community level training, the fact that spousal participation, training in the community actually allows them to come and see what their spouse is actually doing. They also get the chance to ask questions to those that are training and understand what their spouse is doing. So it has actually enabled us to get support from either the caregivers and the intimate partners of girls. Thank you.
Thank you, Obed. So this is the part where we're supposed to get comments from Obed and Madalitso. Madalitso failed to join in. So at this point in time, without using any more time, oh, she has joined in. Mada, do you want to say something for just a minute before we hand it over back to Jason?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Mbonisi, for the presentation. Indeed, I'm Madalitso Chidomu, Economic Strengthening from Malawi, upper project, and we are part of the team that is implementing the Siyakha model. And just a comment, I would just quote what one of the principals from the vocational centers, Thokozani Ntabaonga from Magomero Vocational Center said, and I quote, "We have never had a cohort like this one ever since we started offering the informal vocational training." And she said the girls were more participating, eager, well-spoken, and very assertive. So what that meant was it's about the Siyakha model, the multi-staged approach that it has. It helps the girls. We're not just empowering them economically, but also their social asset. It's a holistic approach. So it makes the Siyakha model unique, apart from what we've been doing previously. So as it has been said from the, at the moment in Malawi, from the labor market assessment, like the 4 sectors that were identified: construction, agriculture, fashion and textile, tourism and hospitality. They were in also the sectors that were in line with what the girls wanted and have been admiring. So there's a lot of commitment, enthusiasm from the girls. And at the moment, they are in their internships. They've just finished the vocation training. Yeah, so that's what is happening in Malawi. Thank you, over.
Thanks, Mada. I'd like to hand over the time to Jason. Then maybe we can respond to any particular questions, any specific questions. Thank you so much.
Super, thank you, Mbonisi, and thanks for your additional comments, Obert and Mada. And thanks, of course, to Benele for getting us started with an overview of the full Siyakha model. We've had a number of good questions coming through in the chat box here. Maybe I'll start with, I feel like there have been a number of questions that different folks have asked about, recognizing the fact that that the young women that we're working with in these programs don't exist in isolation. They are living as part of families. They have parents and caregivers oftentimes around. They have male partners. They have other folks in the community who are affecting the choices that they make and the things that they're able to do. And so through Siyakha, how are you working to get the support and permission and participation, from these various folks, whether it be their parents and caregivers and other family members or their male partners. With some of the discussion in the chat, it seems like the social contract that Benele mentioned plays a very important role in that. I feel like when you guys have talked about Siyakha in the past, there's always lots of questions about the social contract. So maybe we could start there. If you want to say, Benele or Mbonisi, a little bit more about the social contract itself, how that works, but also if there are other things that you're doing as part of Siyakha or as part of other broader DREAMS activities taking place around Siyakha that are addressing these issues.
Thanks, Jason. And I think it's well noted that social network of carers and caregivers, partners is essential. So the process by which the social contract itself is signed is participatory. So once the girls receive their formal letter, as you would if you were applying for a job, notification that you have been successful and you're going to the next stage of the Siyakha model. We encourage using our community mentors. I know different partners have different names for them, but these are the community cadres who work primarily to screen and enroll adolescent girls for DREAMS, deliver the curriculum for the primary package. These are the girls or cadres that we use to support this engagement with carers and bring them to a meeting where the elements of the social contract are discussed, like clause by clause, and that helps to explain what the girls are getting themselves into and the gravity of what we would want them to appreciate in gravity in terms of they've got to start, they've got to finish. They're going into vocational training that's being paid for. They will get assistance from the project where they go into internships. So we would call it like meet the caregiver kind of a meeting where the girls are then able to go through the social contract and have that signed off by the social contract guarantor. We also have in the course of the rest of the model from the end of the foundational training, as best we can, with support from our SI departments, strategic information, and to conduct home visits so that we're constantly getting this feedback from the family or the partner as to how the girls are actually doing. And so some of the elements in the contract start off by explaining what it means now that you're a Siyakha girl, how much time it's going to take, what can you expect from the program implementers, and what the program implementers then expect from the participating girls. It includes, at various stages of the model, a code of conduct that the girls themselves draft that is in alignment with the social contract to say, as Siyakha girls, this is our commitment. This is how we will behave in vocational training. This is what mentors and enterprise owners can expect of us when we are in internship. So keeping that connection, that engagement of the family, private sector, as well as the girls is really, in our experience, really important. Over.
Super, thank you so much, Panele. I see that Jessica Williams asked for a little bit more clarification about what elements are included in the basic versus the comprehensive programs. I think Mbonisi, you were talking about that in your section. Could you give a little bit more details on that?
Thanks, Jason. So the basic package, I think also Vanilla spoke about it briefly, although maybe did not say that this is the basic. But if you look at the package also that we're offering for the in-school girls and some of the girls who are not yet ready to be employed, like who are below the age of employment, we go through the labor market assessment, we go through the rigorous selection process, we go through the soft skills foundational training, we take them through vocational training, but we stop there. They do not go into internships. So for us, that is the basic package. It's the package that we normally give for the girls who are not ready for the world of work. In a nutshell, I hope I answered that.
Yeah, great. That makes sense to me. I'm sure Jessica will let us know, or others, if there are more details, more questions that they have about that. Could you guys say a little bit more about the startup support that is provided? Kanice asks, does the entrepreneurship startup kit include access to startup capital for the women entrepreneurs? But maybe in general, could you just talk a little bit about kind of the startup support that's provided through Siyakha and how it might differ for the entrepreneurship pathways versus the wage employment pathway?
Sure, I'll say a little, and then maybe Vanilla can add. So what we do is we look for opportune moments when the girls are going through their vocational training as well as they're going through their internships for us to provide them with startup materials. We call them tools of trade. So as the girls are going through their vocational training, for example, if somebody is going to be a plumber or to do carpentry, we provide them with the tools that they will need to actually carry out that work. So as they are going through the training, they're actually using their materials, but they will retain them even after the vocational training. When they're now going into their internships, we also give them a little bit of something to use, which they could also retain even after they graduate. There are also small, there are also fees that some trades require to be paid, like trade testing. We pay for that as they're now going into their internships or as they're graduating from their vocational training. For example, the girl that you see on the slide, she probably needs a health test or a health certificate for her to be in catering or for her to be handling food. We normally pay for that as they are getting into their internship, and it normally is valid for a year or two. So we look for opportune moments when the girls are going through their vocational training and as they are going through their internships for us to inject a bit of startup capital that can be used even after the girls graduate.
If I could just add, Jason, in the pilot, remember I mentioned that we had textiles, leatherworks, and auto mechanics as the sectors. Girls were able to receive, for example, safety shoes and some tools in motor mechanics as startup. These are tools required in the very practical vocational training. And I just want to underscore that we insist that the vocational training be as practical as possible to enable us to be able to give them these tools of the trade that Mbonisi has mentioned. We also, from the foundational training, we expect the girls to have picked up a savings discipline, whether she's saving in a group or saving on her own. And that savings discipline is actually tracked by a peer. So within their groups, they'll have a group leader, peer leader, whose job it is to track their savings discipline. And so we also want them to recognize that the savings is structured or is pointed towards them being able to start up their own enterprise or prepare them for the world of work, depending on which pathway they choose. And so it is these introductions in vocational training and internship that support her ability.
Super, thanks. We have a few more questions here, but I know we're running short on time at the moment. So I will use my moderator's privilege, I guess, to pick just one more here for you guys to respond to. And that's, what's topmost in a lot of people's minds, COVID and the adaptations that you've been experimenting with to try to keep things going and keep things moving through this. I know you said a little bit about some of those adaptations, but Whitney would like to know a little bit more about the adaptations that you've been experimenting with in different places and what seems to be working well.
Thanks, Jason. And thank you, Whitney, for your question. Firstly, we've had to look at a way of digitizing the foundational training, which, as I explained, is the first training of the model. And this is where they get the bare bones, the building blocks of the model and pursuing a livelihood track. And so we're in the process of completing that digitization process, not to make the model completely virtual, because again, looking at the vulnerabilities of these adolescent girls, we've had to create a hybrid of some sessions are in person with a trained Siyakha champion. That's what we call them, Siyakha champions, who do the actual trainings, and then sessions that the girls are completing virtually, but within their groups. So 3 or 4 girls who live close to each other would then be able to use a virtual platform like a tablet, of course, with an offline version, to go through the virtual material and then meet up with the Siyakha champion in order for reinforcement and tracking for comprehension and so on. We've also had to look at exploring residential trainings, because of course in COVID, if schools or vocational training centers are not functional, or if they are, the girls can't get up and down because COVID was followed up with a lockdown scenarios in large number of the countries. And so having to explore the residential trainings, and if it becomes residential, how then can we support child minding, especially for women who have younger kids? So these are some of the things that we've been looking at, and of course looking at how we can strengthen the entrepreneurial pathway that will enable girls to start something on their own with the support of a mentor or an artisan in their community who may or may not be functioning because of COVID. I think Mbonisi can add if I've left any.
I think you've covered most of the things, Vanille. Thank you.
Great. Kiernan or Jason, did you want to make any closing remarks before I close the session?
Well, first, I'd like to, thanks to everybody, and especially to our presenters today with World Education, Bantwana, Zimbabwe, and everybody from Mozambique and Malawi as well. But for the Bantwana folks, there have been a few questions here in the chat box about, how can people learn more about Siyakha? How can they follow up with you after the webinar? How do you work with folks, to bring Siyakha into a new context? Maybe you could address that very, very quickly before we do our final closing.
Great, thank you for asking. So I did put up my email address here as well as Mbonisi's. He was one of the speakers. I'm with World Education, Mbonisi is with Bantwana, Zimbabwe. Together, we provide a package of TA to other partners looking to implement the model or just wanting a consultation, that type of thing. So you could get in touch with one or both of us. I think if you're in the region, if you're an African partner in the region, Mbonisi is probably the best point of contact. But either of us will make sure the message gets responded to. Thank you.
Super, thanks so much, Liz. And Kiernan, you want to wrap us up and close us out?
Yes, thank you very much. So thanks all for the great questions. The Q&A session was very insightful, and I hope you all enjoyed today's webinar. As a reminder, this was recorded and the slides will be made available to all those who registered today. Again, just noting the points of contact, and feel free to reach out with any follow-up questions. And again, just wanted to thank the Bantwana team for explaining their early experiences with Siyakha. And I just wanted to express too my excitement on what we've achieved together and what we will continue to do so across all of our DREAMS countries in terms of economic strengthening. So thank you all very much.
Great, thanks, Kiernan. And I just wanted to recognize the role of Jack Amondi, my co-champion, who is not able to speak right now to close it out because he's in transit in Nairobi. But he's the reason that we're all here together. He met you, Kiernan, and you guys, I think, talked about this. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this is the first of 5 sessions where each session is a deep dive into a model. I was chatting back and forth with Liz and others that we may want to think about a 6th session where we bring it all together. And we do want to think about these questions we got. There's a number of questions that can sort of take us in a direction, and also the requests for, can we do this here? We were hearing some of people on the chat saying, can we adapt this for my region? So, get in touch with the folks at World Education and Bantwana, and let's think about how we can make that easier and make it happen. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.